I'm a front-end engineer working on our customer-facing UI, and I've been using Ember for about almost 2 years now. And the project that I've been working on in that time is a complete rewrite of our application from a deprecated CoffeeScript backbone app to a new, shiny new Ember app, and we're just about finished with that process. One of the challenges for a company can be that not everyone is able to just drop everything and do a full rewrite. That takes time and effort and a lot of resources. So, but there are a lot of things that people can take away from the talk as they're working on it, even if they do it piece by piece or component by component to migrate their app. A big focus of ours has been testing. We've been trying to get test coverage on every feature that we build and make sure that we're writing tests as we submit the code, so no feature can go in without having subsequent tests with it. So that's been a big focus of ours. Another kind of area that I would have loved to spend a little bit more time on were before and afters of things that we built. Since it's still in a private beta, we weren't quite ready to do that. But if I were giving the talk, say, in 2 months, it would have been a little bit more content in terms of before and after. So, but a lot of things are useful regardless of whether you're doing a rewrite or not. Talked a little bit about learning Ember. Testing was a big focus, as I mentioned, tooling, and a lot of the community solutions that I talked about. So I hope that even if some people aren't doing a full rewrite, they're still able to take pieces of that away and apply it to where they are, regardless of the status of their Ember project. I had a lot of people come up to me afterwards and say, I'm in a very similar position, or we're about to start a project like this, or we just did the exact same thing, and a lot of things resonated with me. We had some specific questions about the tools that we used, or how did we cut over from the old release to the new one for customers. So it seemed like from the audience there were a lot of people in a similar situation, which is great because a lot of people are using Ember and a lot of companies are using Ember for their customer-facing or internal tools. So we're not alone, and there are a lot of big and small companies that have invested resources into making a difference in terms of moving on to the newer frameworks. We did stop most feature work on our old application, but there were things that would come up where we'd have to fix them or develop a small amount of a feature in order for people to be able to continue to use it. We had one person on our team that mainly focused on doing that work so that the rest of us could just focus on learning more about Ember and getting the features in. Our team grew over time, so we started with 2 people. We were there at last year's EmberConf. Now we have a team of 7, so we added a lot of people along the way with varying levels of skills in terms of Ember or background maybe in Rails. So we were able to kind of focus on just writing the Ember application with a little bit of work on the old app. But one of the things that was a big focus for us was learning the best way to do things and staying up to date with the community and using community standards that were the best available at the time. So that made a big difference as well. And just getting everybody up to speed with Ember and getting more involved with the community really helped us kind of build up to a full-fledged team with experience in Ember and also just more experience writing more Ember every single day. Growing our team from 2 to 7, challenges that we faced really were around process, and we also adapted Agile while we were growing our team. So a lot of kind of process-related things. The UX team didn't exist before myself and my colleague James Rosen joined Fastly almost 2 years ago. So it was really just about like finding what are the team norms that we want to have, what are the processes that we want to put in place, and just kind of building that up was, I wouldn't say challenging, but took time to kind of find the right balance for everybody. Ember is a really fast-moving framework, so we had another challenge for us was just keeping up with the latest everything. There's so many new options, so many new things, and we didn't want to build an application and then find out as soon as we were finished that everything was too old or deprecated. So staying up with the latest on that was a challenge just because the framework moves so fast. So that, I think that, along with building our team and finding team norms and process that works for us, was kind of a journey that we went on throughout the last year and a half. It's really hard to narrow down a favorite just because there were so many great talks this year and there were 2 tracks. So there are some talks that I haven't even seen yet, so maybe I haven't seen my favorite talk yet. But I know that as of today, a lot of the first day recordings are out, so every talk that I didn't get to go to, I'll be happy to go back and watch. And one that really resonated with me was Chris Lopresto did a talk about style guide-driven development. I don't know if you had a chance to catch that, but it was really motivating in terms of we have an external style guide that our Ember app consumes, and just the way that they were able to use their style guide to do more rapid prototyping of their application was amazing. They were able to throw things together so quickly because they already had things defined in a way that was really useful to them. So that was a favorite talk of mine. Estelle's talk about dissecting an Ember CLI build was really interesting to me. She's a great speaker and really broke it down, the broccoli builds and how CLI works. That was something I wasn't really familiar with, and it got really into like the meat of the technicalities, so I really enjoyed that. A really fun talk was Matt McKenna's talk about building a game in Ember starring his cat, and he was able to build an iOS app, he's working on an Android app, and had a desktop application, all of a pretty simple kind of jumping platforming game that was, I'm sure, very complex on the back end, but also really fun to play. And we were able to download it during the talk onto our phones and give him ratings and have some high scores in there. So there was a bit of audience participation with that talk as well. So it was just, it was really fresh and exciting and a different take on something that I don't know anything about, which is game development. Yeah. And then finally, Bridget Warner did a great job in her talk about an illustrated guide to Ember. It was all hand-illustrated slides of their company's work on I think it was a public school district's admin dashboard so that they could go in and review things like budgets and attendance and things like that. It's just a really creative, crafty way of telling their story of using Ember. And since they were working with people that would print out every single thing was on the website, so they had to kind of support older browsers and different behaviors that they weren't really expecting. So it was a nice tale of things that they learned along the way. So hard to narrow it down to a favorite, but lots of really good talks, and everything from building a game with your cat to broccoli builds.
Yeah.
I have to say, at the beginning, I was so focused on getting my talk finished that I didn't do after-conference activities as much as I would have liked to. I also caught the flu in the middle of the conference, so I had to kind of shut things down a little. But one of my favorite experiences this year was the Ember Women Helping Women program. Mm-hmm. And that was not only something that we connected before the conference, so we had email chains going and introductions to people in the community to just make people feel more welcome. And when we got there, we had a presentation by Bear Douglas, who's at Twitter, and she did a presentation on public speaking, which was useful to me as a person who would be speaking the next day, and useful to people who maybe haven't given a conference talk before, but they're interested or just want to be more confident in speaking anywhere. So that was a really great presentation, and it also gave us an opportunity to practice our first couple minutes of our talks, just to really nail that introduction. So we workshopped those with all the women in the presentation, and then we were able to have a luncheon that was sponsored by Fastly and Dockyard, where we all went out and met each other. There were about 20, 25 women that were able to attend, and just make connections, talk to people that are also in the same situation as us, and what types of things are they working on, and just met a bunch of wonderful people throughout that made me feel really comfortable at the conference. I had all these new friends there, and a lot of people represented were speaking, which was great. So that was one of my favorite programs. But generally, I feel like this year it was really community focused. We had a big focus on women helping women. We had a big focus on the Ember community drinks and dinner. It just seemed like everybody was really coming together rather than separating out, oh, this meetup's going to happen over here, and this one's going to happen here, and this one's going to happen here. Everybody really came together, which was really nice in a conference that still seems kind of small, but has grown a lot through the years.
Yeah.
Working with Ember for the last couple of years. I do a consultancy, small one. It's me at the moment with a couple contractors. We've been building a HR application to all in Ember, kind of like Trello, but larger. I've been part of the Ember, was the docs team. It was renamed the learning team at EmberConf a couple weeks ago, and been helping out with our meetup as well.
And
we're in Denver.
Denver.
Meeting with folks was probably the main reason I went. I interact with folks on the Slack regularly, but it's nice to put faces to handles and actually see people in person. But another one of the highlights I'd say was probably the opening keynote. Just in the course of listening to the keynote, probably my biggest thing that it really started sounding like, it's kind of what came out in the keynote as well, is just that Ember as a whole is stabilizing in some ways, solidifying a bit. I was listening to a different presentation by Brandon Hayes at the front side. He's at Mountain West Ruby recently. He's talking about the different phases of a framework and whether you should be how you want to choose them. One of the things he mentioned was that with frameworks, they tend to have, he's got this analogy, pioneers, settlers, and then town planners. And pioneers are kind of going out and looking things over and trying out lots of new stuff. And settlers are kind of settling the land a bit. Ember seems like it's hit the settling stage in the sense that polishing is what's occurring now as opposed to working out major new ideas. And watching Ember fast boot, that's an addition and it's a polishing as opposed to a total re-architecting of Ember. I mean, it kind of happened in the 1 to 2 transition with data down, actions up, but at this point with 2.5 and on, it doesn't feel like there's major new shakeups coming for apps. And so that was one of the biggest things I noticed, is just it feels like things are smoothing out a bit. I've got a couple of sons, 4 years old, 2 years old, and under 1. They love big machinery. And one of the things I started noticing everywhere I go with them is all these big machines have hydraulics.
Yeah.
But you don't tend to notice those. You just notice that these big machines have lots of power and can do a variety of things. So they're like dump trucks, steamrollers, and all sorts of things. But most of it's predicated on the use of hydraulics. And what's fascinating thinking about it is that it seems like Ember CLI is really the underpinning hydraulic system of a lot of what Ember does these days, in the sense of most of the folks talking about some area that they were wanting to work on, a lot of the times they'd end up going, and you can just do Ember install my add-on name, but that's predicated on the use of Ember CLI. And so that's one of the other big things that really struck me, is that we're standing on this build system that enables a lot of things that everyone's enjoying because we're sharing a common set of functionality. But just like with hydraulics, it's an unsung thing for the most part.
Exactly.
Probably the last thing is that I continue to be struck by how small the Ember core team is. Just in watching them offline, not at EmberConf as much, just that overall they seem to be getting buried at times. It depends on the person, but there's so much landing on them that I start thinking I'd really like to see if we could help them by relieving some of the pressure. And you've got issue access at this point for doing issue triage. And
Yep.
but one of the things I've been starting to think about is how to build some sort of tool to make it easier to get real visibility on certain issues that are really blocking the Ember ecosystem, and then flagging those so that everyone in the ecosystem can see it. I mean, Godfrey Chan sent out a tweet going, I need some help on Glimmer 2 stuff. And
Yeah. The book issue, right?
right. And so there are different things like that that occur, but it really depends on the person's Twitter following whether or not that really gets noticed and helped out. And so I'm thinking about whether there's some way to kind of build a tool that can be used to broadcast that, and also something meetups could refer to for contributing answers. Well, we found that the contributing workshops, attendance has been somewhat sporadic depending on the night. I mean, we found that it's not always good to do Thursday night. We had 2 people show up the last time when it was a Thursday night. But overall, it seems like with the contributing workshops, it gives people a chance to start getting their feet wet at helping out with potentially small issues, clear up to really large ones. But to get, if folks are interested in helping out with Ember, it gives them kind of a gentle entry into Ember. And so the guides, we did a redesign on the guides, but they weren't responsive. Well, I had a guy who does that for RTD. It's our transport authority out here. And he came in and one night, that's what he worked on. So he's the reason we have responsive guides. And that was really helpful because I wanted it, but I didn't have the time to do it. But just being able to come up with a list of these things would really help everyone. And then folks have the expertise, or they self-select to work on different things.
Yeah.
A number of code schools that teach about Ember, so they come in with folks who have no experience with Ember at all. It's pretty hard for them to jump straight into doing Ember data bug issues. But we've started doing pairing of folks as well, which allows folks who are interested in Ember to pair up with folks who have a lot of experience, and that may lead to jobs in the long run, but at least it allows these younger developers to come use their interest and enthusiasm and potentially free time in the evening to really kind of push things along a bit.
Yeah.
The idea of pairing was something I was going to try the last time, and then we only had 3 people show up. So I paired with another guy. The next time Ember CLI has a new release with 2.5, if you do a new version or new app of Ember with an Ember new install, you'll see a welcome page. And I built that with another guy, primarily in the last time we did one of these open workshops.
That's crazy.
It was fun. It's been something I've been mulling around, but I finally had enough time and then somebody else to kind of talk with me about it. So we jointly worked on building the tests and working out how to work it into Ember.
So that's cool.
But it's just kind of nice to be able to look at things and go, I did that. A lot of the add-ons that get used pretty heavily, Ember CLI Mirage and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of been what I've been thinking about, is how do I kind of push those things. And so right now I'm working on a tool to enable making that be easier by scraping the different repos and grabbing certain tags and pulling them back. So if folks have interest, I'd love to put them to work on building that to start with, because I think that will then make other things go faster. To do it, if people have questions, they're welcome to contact me on chat or Twitter.
So I lived in Southern California, like in the Costa Mesa, Newport, Irvine area for about 8 years, and so that's how I know Bill and Andrew and a lot of the other people from SoCal. And went to the Ember meetup quite a bit, hosted many times, but obviously, like he said, last year I moved to the Bay Area to work at Netflix, and there I work on internal tools and infrastructure. So as many people know, Netflix uses React for their consumer-facing UI stuff, and there's a really long story of why that's actually a really good idea. But on their internal side, we actually use a whole gamut of frameworks. We use Angular, Angular 1, Angular 2, Ember, Polymer, you name it. There's, it's a really big company, so as you can imagine, there's a lot of different apps. And on the apps that I work on and maintain, we have one of them is one of the largest Ember apps I've ever seen. It's called Argus, and there's some stuff I've posted a couple times on the blog, and then also Ben Lesh has given a talk about this charting Ember NF chart. Ember NF Graph, this charting component library we made. That we used in Argus. But Argus is basically this real-time dashboard that gives employees at Netflix insights into the Netflix cloud, for lack of a better term. And there's a lot of complications to it because it's very specific to our use case. We have a lot of real-time events that are coming in that we monitor for alerts and other logging purposes, but that's written in an Ember app. And so we had a lot when you're dealing with creating an app for engineers and not for regular consumers. There's actually different problems you have to solve because these software engineers typically want more data than what a normal user would want. So you have to display a lot. Like a lot of times you can do certain performance tricks. Like for example, if you have too many things going on and it's causing render issues, the easiest thing is do less work. Show less things, which is usually a good idea for normal consumers, but engineers are a little different, and they want the fire hose of data. So there were a lot of really cool problems we had to solve for that particular product, and so that's Argus.
Cool.
I love EmberConf. Yeah. And as some people do know, I will admit that I would say these days I do a lot more React than I do Ember, and it's not because I think one is better than the other. I actually love the fact that I have quite a bit of experience with Ember and React, and I'm hoping to get some more experience with Angular 2 because I really like Angular 2 a lot. It really opens up it really opens up your eyes that these frameworks, and I know this sounds super corny and cheesy, but they are just different. They're getting so fast that really it comes down to the right tool for the job and the right tool for the team at hand.
Uh-oh. We might have lost Jay. He's frozen. Jay's in a low bandwidth territory right
This
now.
application.
Oh, he's back. Jay, we lost you for a second.
Uh-oh. What was the last thing you heard?
We heard about the right tool for the job and the right tool for the team at hand.
Sure, yeah. And so if, for us in this particular case, and not every case, but this particular case, we chose React for this app because a majority of the people contributing to this application are actually server guys. These are guys that Java is their bread and butter. And if you've written a lot of Java or hung around with a lot of Java guys, you'll quickly learn that Java people are used to configuring everything. They love to configure every single thing. There is no such thing as convention. I mean, I'm exaggerating, and so Ember is like the exact opposite of what they're used to. And when you're used to something, and why is that good? Well, they say things like, I don't want it to do something without me specifically telling it to do it, because then they understand the system, because they did it. It didn't just magically happen. And they're not wrong. I mean, again, it's it's pros and cons development styles, and for them, the Ember magic way, we just could not. We just could not get them up to speed quick enough. And so with React, it really doesn't give you a whole lot. If you try and compare React to Ember, it's kind of apples to oranges because it's just a view layer. React is just a view layer. It doesn't give you anything else. And so it's a lot easier and quicker to get up and running because there's a lot less to learn. But then you acquire a lot more, and this is all personal opinion, then you acquire a lot more technical debt because you're reinventing things that Ember already created for you in conventions. And then, it's harder to collaborate with other people because you're making your own conventions, There's pros and cons.
But if that team needs to take the keys and the wheel and drive it, then that's what they need, right?
Exactly, and we wanted their contributions, the Java guys. We wanted them to be able to contribute easily and quickly, and we tried Angular and Ember and then React, and kind of gave them a walkthrough on all of them, and unanimously they wanted to use React, and we actually were excited to see what the hype was about, and also just learn a new programming model. So I do really recommend that even if you, for a lot of teams, I do still highly recommend using Ember, but I would say still you should try Angular and you should try React just to see what it's about.
Yeah, you're not the first person who mentioned that. I talked to another consultant over at EmberConf, and he said, you know what, I think we need to branch out a little bit more because there's a bigger audience and there's more problems to solve, and there's more frameworks that fit different environments.
Right, and that actually, I'm trying to think of what it was called. I have my page right up. Oh, there it is. Yeah. That actually leads me into a really good one of the talks at EmberConf was cross-pollinating communities. And it was I think it was cross-pollinating communities we all win. It was by Chris Ball, and it was actually it took the words right out of my mouth on the sense that all these communities are stealing shamelessly ideas from the other communities, and so in a lot of ways, if you just ignore what anyone else is doing, if you just plow straight ahead, and some communities actually still do this, they don't pay attention to what the other frameworks are doing. You miss out on innovations and paradigms that they discover are the best way to do it. Ember actually, just like Chris Ball's talk said, Ember learned a lot from React. Yeah. And React learned a lot from Ember, but it's really good that now we're trying, that some of the thought leaders in the community are finally dipping their toes in other frameworks to see what are the good ideas we can take away from this. And still stay true, to the Ember way of doing things in the sense of very opinionated and batteries included. But specifically the stuff they stole from Ember was the data flow model and the just re-render type of paradigm where every single time you're just re-rendering everything, and then it's HTML bars, or in this case Glimmer 2 in the new version. Takes care of doing the diffing for you. Their keynote, the whole Glimmer 2 announcement, it really got me excited. Mainly because our app, our Ember app, it has the performance issues that they're describing. They demoed DB Monster, and then they demoed the uptime boxes, which were the green and white ones ticking back and forth. Our app is not too dissimilar from that. As hilarious it is, people always say that those are contrived examples, but they're really not. Not everyone creates apps like that, but we do. Yeah. And so we really need that type of performance. And so that's exciting. It's very exciting for me. And after the talk and after I got some time outside of the conference, I did dig a little bit into the Glimmer 2 stuff, into the actual implementation, because I like looking under the hood. And it is very different. Very different. It won't be different for consumers, like people in your Ember app. It won't be that different. But as far as the implementation, it's a from scratch rewrite. Yeah. And it's very. Its approach is totally different. They aren't lying when they say it is a virtual machine. And it, at first glance, that seems like it's overkill and over-engineering. And I think if I'm being honest, the I'm still not convinced that it isn't per se, but you can't deny the performance. Like I looked at their Uptime Boxes demo and looked at the code they use, and it really does, there's no tricks. They're not doing any tricks. It is definitely doing that rendering, and it's very fast. Absolutely. And the other beautiful thing about it, compared to the old version of Glimmer, is that the API for the API for creating these Glimmer 2 components, because like Yehuda said, that one of the problems was that the old Glimmer, aka HTML bars, it didn't have a concept of a component. That was an Ember specific thing, and that really was most of the bottleneck in performance. And I can verify that. That's the performance issues that we've had in our Ember apps. It was lots of nested components, and really the most of the time spent and chewed up was inefficiencies around the component model. And so now that they've baked components into Glimmer 2, you can actually do, if you do, he did explain that, he demoed the Uptime Boxes with pure Glimmer, and then he demoed it with the Ember abstraction on top of it. And the Ember abstraction, obviously, anytime you use any abstraction, it's going to cost you.
It's an extra function call, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, more than that. There's quite a bit of stuff. But so it didn't perform as well as the Glimmer 2. It performed like light years better than the current version of Ember. So it's a huge...
Yeah, it was like 60 frames per second or something. The
60 frames was for the Glimmer 2 raw, and then about 40 FPS for Ember with the Ember abstraction. Now, that's for most cases. Again, people aren't making games in Ember, and for these type of things, for a lot of computation stuff, you still will get at 60 FPS. But let's say that you have an app that is really, really performance centric, and you really need to squeeze every little rendering performance you can out of it. Now you have a primitive where you can drop out of Ember and still use the Ember-like paradigms, because you can create these Glimmer 2 components.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying people should always do that. You should still use Ember, but if you ever need to drop out, you don't have to drop out to raw JavaScript and manage all this crazy stuff. You can just drop down to a pure Glimmer 2 component and get ridiculous performance. So it opens up a lot of possibilities. It's really cool. I really miss Southern California. I mean, there's a lot of great things about where I work. I love my job, love where I live, but I do miss Southern California. Not just the weather, but the people.
So I run the front side, which is a JavaScript front-end shop that primarily works in Ember. So I do less and less code as time wears on, more and more of the hustle side of things, but I still try to build a few apps here and there and stay close to client work so I don't lose my edge too much. But Ember's moving real fast. So basically right now my job is treading water to keep up with all the changes. Conferences have really moved for me to be a place to meet people. I guess they kind of always were. And because things get so well recorded, I've become a little lax about attending the sessions themselves and try to spend as much time as I can meeting people and getting to know people. And so I spend a lot of time in the hallway track. But the highlights of the conference itself, I obviously really liked Charles's talk. That was a lot of fun. I liked the keynote. I had some confusion about it. But I've got to kind of since iron that out and understand what they were going for. And so what I did see of the talks was really great. And the talks are just now getting posted online, so I'm really excited to catch them. I literally walked out of the keynote not sure of what their point was. It seemed like the Ember leadership just went and poked mobile apps in the eye and then walked off the stage. And I was like, wait, why did you do that? What's wrong with native mobile apps? And so I got a chance afterwards to talk to a couple people that explained to me, what was meant by that, what they were trying to do, and the message that they were going for. And I was able to kind of stitch back together a message that I realized now that they were going for that I may have just missed. But basically, it is there is an environment of tension between native apps and mobile apps right now, because mobile apps try to replicate the experience of native apps and do a terrible job of it. You can always tell when you're using a mobile app that's pretending to be, or a mobile web experience that's pretending to be native and isn't really. And so tracking things on your finger doesn't work exactly right. And you could spend all this time trying to put that together. And what Ember is saying is, so there's a sort of dividing line between like, we think mobile web is going to win. We think native is going to win. A lot of people were saying mobile web is completely dead, and the web is dead because everybody's using these mobile devices to access information now. And so everybody's just going to install all these apps. And so what Yehuda and Tom were trying to say is, whoa, there's some serious drawbacks to allowing two companies to dominate this space, to asking users to install 50, 75 megabyte apps to access any information and then locking them into a walled garden inside a walled garden. Is there a way that we can bring the open web back to mobile? And the answer is yes, but the tooling is pretty terrible for that right now. So what if Ember steps in and says, we want to be the SDK for the web? The way that React community is handling that is saying, hey, we understand that we can't give you a native-like experience exactly on mobile web, so we're going to build React to native and give you a true native experience on native and web for web. And Ember is saying, nope, we're putting all our chips on Team Web. We're Team Web. We think that betting the future on improving the experience of mobile web is a better bet than sort of capitulating to native apps taking over and becoming dominant, because you can't deep link into the application, because it requires a 75 megabyte download. There are some serious drawbacks to that style of saying, well, just kick it over to the mobile team and we'll have the mobile team do the mobile side. So everybody's looking at those trade-offs and trying to split the difference somewhere along the way. And Ember's looking at a long-term bet over the next few years of saying that we think that native web applications are pure web mobile applications will win the day, because their advantages are pretty great. They just sort of have to be true to themselves and stop pretending to be native applications. So once I was able to put that story together, I understood what they were going for. It just came across as a little disjointed and maybe a little confrontational to me in the keynote, but I now understand what they were going for. Saying, hey, the news is saying the web is dead. We'd like to show you that we are betting that the web is going to live through this and that it's going to win for these reasons. And so I took that sort of defensive position without understanding the context they were trying to say that in. And also, I didn't think there was enough acknowledgement of the true advantages of native apps. There are times and places where native apps are the absolute right way to go. But they're saying, hey, don't give up on the web. And the question that a person might have after that is that, well, is that just because Ember doesn't have millions of dollars to invest in Ember native the way that React did with React native? And I think it's a fair question, but I think it really is a philosophical bet from people like Tom and Yehuda saying that our job is to bolster and improve the web and let the mobile web be true to what the web is about. And it doesn't have to pretend to be a native app in order to be successful. And in fact, my experience is mobile web sites that try to pretend to be native applications turn out experiences that are subpar. So let's let mobile web be true to what mobile web is, solve the use cases that make the most sense. Like, to me, I don't want a LinkedIn app. I want a LinkedIn web experience on the mobile. And the new LinkedIn mobile experience, where the previous one was completely unusable, literally unusable. They rewrote it in Ember, and it's actually quite good now. If for people that use LinkedIn. But I don't want to install that as an app, and I want to be able to click a link from the web and have it go to that person's profile on LinkedIn, and not have a big giant prompt that jumps in my face and says, hey, do you want to do a 75 megabyte download so that you can look at this person's profile? So I totally get where they're coming from. I think with a little bit of crafting that, you can acknowledge the fact that there are other experiences where you absolutely want there to be a native application. So anyway, I thought the keynote really stuck out to me, because this is like where, hey, we're setting the direction for the next couple of years. And Ember wants to be the SDK for this new mobile web. Since the majority of users worldwide are going to be on these devices, we have to embrace and acknowledge that and start designing with that in mind. I love the idea that Ember is kind of looking 2, 3, 4, 5 years out and placing their bets there. And I like that strategy. Cool. It's hard to comment on something when you're so close to it. I saw that talk 7 or 8 times maybe, in various forms, and the last version was really unfinished, and it was the night before, and so we were up late last night, the last night before, as a team, kind of helping him poke holes in it. And so two things: I thought he did a really terrific job. I learned a lot through the course of that about the analogy of using a movie and frames of a movie to understand the idea of snippets of immutable data, and use that as a metaphor, and then also providing a gentle on-ramp for people to introduce and get the benefits of using immutability. Because I've always found immutability to be one of those like shibboleth words that people use to be like, oh, you're in the club of cool, smart developers. And so I've always really hated that kind of stuff coming from a non-traditional background like you have, where you get in and you realize these developers with like traditional CS education, and they write a lot of like, they talk about Haskell a lot, and they sound really smart, and it feels a little bit exclusive. And I've never really liked that. And immutability seemed like one of those subjects. It's a little touchy for me, because it's kind of used by people that I consider maybe a little bit elitist to exclude people. And Charles is really trying to bring people gently into that camp and say, no, try this. You will actually, if you taste this, you will like it. And here's how to try a little bit of it in your application at a time. And I thought he did a really good job of making that introduction very gentle. And people are like, okay, well, I want more concrete examples now. But that's the right answer. I don't think he should have done more concrete examples than he did in the talk, because he left people wanting to see and learn more. Like, great, now there's a follow-up blog post or a follow-up talk or something. So yeah. I thought it was, to me, it was dialed in just right. There weren't enough jokes. I wanted more jokes, but
I know, right? Like trying to put a new concept into 30 minutes is really hard as it is, right? Like at a meetup, we might go 45 plus questions after.
Yeah.
But he had a huge crowd at, the side of the podium there when he was done. I could tell it really sparked a lot of interest. That was also one of my favorite talks. I like how, in Ember, there's always been this thought around, new people coming on, tell me the Ember way. And, you and I have discussed the Ember way is that it changes. But in this case, Charles introducing immutability was not against an Ember way per se. The Ember way allows you to do what you need to do. And so I thought that was really cool, that something maybe you might only see in an iOS app, for example, like some immutable class is available in Ember. You just have to decide what your implementation is going to be. And he provided like a stamp or a pattern. Like you can start here with a simple concept of, clips on a movie.
Yeah.
And even rewind. Like he says, this enables the back button or the undo button. I was like, oh, that's big.
Yeah. And what this conversation started with people coming in like React and the Flux architecture. Elm is pushing this, like all this. There is a huge movement but it's all happening outside the Ember ecosystem, because Ember is built around the Ember object, which is mutable and sort of complex. And he's saying, I think you can sidestep that whole thing, but continue to write idiomatic Ember. And there are some other approaches. People are trying to bring in these ideas from outside, but they're saying what Charles did in his talk that I liked was that he offered a gentle on-ramp, but staying idiomatic in Ember. And you can kind of sidestep around some of the stuff in Ember, but use this sort of very small detour that exists only within the context of a component or something. Instead of saying, replace your entire data model, don't use Ember data, use Redux, use this other Flux architecture, completely change the way that you architect your component system to match that of something that looks like React. And instead of any of that stuff, maybe that will win the day or whatever, but my bet is not. My bet is that going with idiomatic, broad, community-accepted Ember best practices and introducing small bits of these immutable objects into each of your components and kind of slowly refactoring that way is going to be a lot easier for a community to take on. And it's most likely to be successful, and it's produced really good results. It's sort of the 80-20 rule. So with like 20% of the effort, you get 80% of the benefit of these like really complicated to introduce and basically throw your whole code base away kind of deals to say we're going to refactor from Ember data to Redux is like turning the box upside down and shaking everything out of it. Where this says no, we're just going to add one additional tool to your tool set, and you can slowly move toward using these immutable data structures to get an app that's debuggable basically and easily
I
modified.
know, right? Yeah, that was a huge benefit. Was like you can see the snapshots as you
Yeah.
debug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal. It makes it makes the practice of, I mean, I love Ember. I've always loved how fast it makes building an application, but I've never loved how slow it makes debugging an application when you are digging deep inside of the Ember run loop and you're fighting Ember objects that don't log to the console correctly. And so these are just baby steps to making things easier to live with. And I think the result of this kind of thinking. Charles isn't revolutionizing anything. He's just kind of going with the flow of the direction things are starting to head in Ember and saying, oh, the next logical step is using these immutable data structures to re-render our components and stuff like that in a way that's easy to understand and to debug and to live with, and has a bunch of benefits with it. So, yeah, I loved it. I loved. There's so much more from the conference, obviously, but those were the two things that stuck out to me. Those were
I think I've been working in web development for 12 or 13 years now, but I mostly did backend development, like for 10 years, and then I got acquainted with Ember, I think it's 3 years now, and I really just grew to like it a lot, and started even recording screencasts, and then I published a lot of blog posts, and then wrote the book that Bill mentioned, called Rock and Roll with Ember.js. It was last February, and I'm a solo consultant, so I do consulting on Ember projects, almost exclusively Ember projects now. And I think that's it. I went to EmberConf in 2015, so last year was the first time, and I also went this year. That's where I met Bill.
Yeah.
The excitement was there just in 2015. So yeah, that was really I think tangible, and you could also feel that it has grown a lot, or at least that was my impression. So it wasn't. I think last year there were 600 and something people, and this year it was almost 1,000. So it's like a 50% increase almost. And even though 600 is already a lot, 1,000 is. You could feel that there were more people working around. So, but it was still really cool. I really enjoyed both years. A lot of time in the hallway track.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a couch.
So, maybe then hallway track is not the right expression. I mean, I walked around a lot and just met people, started chatting with them. I did went to the hallway track with the sofas from time to time too, because they had a couch. That was like the big benefit of the hallway track. Yeah. But so I didn't see all of the. I didn't attend the talk in all of the slots. You know what? I think the more conferences I go to, the more I feel like this is the very essence of conferences, like meeting people, talking to people, like asking them questions. I also met a lot of people through my mailing list and just via the book. Yeah. So my readers or just people who want to who ask me some things, and it's so great to meet these people in person. And it's kind of bad to just say, hey, I'm that guy, here's your sticker, and then leave. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to chat for at least for a few minutes with as many people as I could. Right. So my strategy with the book is that I release updates to the book every time Ember changes, which means I try to be very up to date with the latest Ember. So Ember has this release cycle where there is a new minor version every 6 weeks, more or less, and I try to release a new version a few weeks after a new version comes out. And so a lot of times I don't really have to do anything from the Ember part. Yeah. I mean, going from 2 to 3 to 2 to 4 wasn't really a big change, for example. But I constantly also improve the book in ways like I have an issue repository for the book, which is totally public. So even if you don't have a copy of the book, you can just go there and see the issues. So people just write in, I mean, create issues in this repository and tell me if something is not totally clear, or just give suggestions on how to improve. Like someone said that it would be nice to have the code diffs, like in a diff style, you know, if there is a theme
before and after,
and others. Yeah, exactly. Like if you said git diff from the command line.
Yeah. 'Cause
I really enjoyed Charles Lowell's talk.
Yes.
Immutable UI. What was that? Immutable UI is for you and I.
Yeah.
It's for you and I. Yeah, that was it. So I thoroughly enjoyed that talk. It was great. I'm a big fan of functional programming in general for the clarity it brings, and so I like seeing these ideas implemented for the UI. Or maybe not implemented, but fleshed out for the UI. Well, yeah, I would like to see the Glimmer 2 talk with Godfrey and Yehuda, because I didn't get to see that one.
Yeah, I skipped that one too.
Yeah, it was very complex. That's what I heard. Like, it was really, really hard to understand. So maybe watching the video helps me. Like, I can pause and I can rewind and watch it again if there is a part I don't understand. So I live in Budapest, Hungary, which is like Central Europe. And I, with the other guy that attended EmberConf from Hungary, we are the main organizers of our group called Ember Budapest. And I think actually the meetup group, there are 200 people, but we have an attendance of 15, 20 around that. So it's quite a small group, but I really like that there are new people each time, so that new people seem to be coming and interested in learning about Ember. So yeah, and we have a presentation. So we haven't tried, I think, various ideas of about what to do at these meetup sessions. We mostly just have 2 presentations and then go to a bar and talk about Ember and other things. So I think we might want to like change this a little bit. Like, as you said, just watching videos or just asking people how we could help them with Ember or JavaScript and stuff like this.
Yeah. Come to Budapest, right? Visit.
Come to Budapest, yes. We have, actually, now that you remind me that the European conference, the European EmberConf is called EmberFest, and this year is going to be in Budapest at the end of October. So thank you for reminding me, Bill, that you should totally come. It's a great city to visit. The conference is going to be huge. And then, you know, I mean, Europe is very small. You can be in, I don't know, in Paris or Berlin or Rome or your favorite city in Europe in 2 hours.
I'm using Ember as a consultant. So I work on a lot of different projects across the board. I've been using Ember since Pre 1.0, and I'm also the San Diego Ember organizer here. So I do a lot of workshops and one-on-one mentorship and pair programming. So at Marina Village Conference Center, which is right off of the 8. It's really easy for everyone to get to, and it's gonna allow us to have 100 attendees this year, thanks to the folks at EchoBind who have sponsored the event. And we're bringing back the workshop that we did last year. It did so well. We had a full turnout of everyone that RSVP'd, and we're gonna have some Ember experts from EchoBind there on staff, and also I think some people from the LA group as well. So I'm really excited about it. I think my favorite part of EmberConf has always been everything that goes on outside of EmberConf and all of the friends I get to see and all of the events and networking that goes on after the event. And there was a whole lot of it this year. I felt like there was way more than last year. A bunch of different groups put on a bunch of coordinated events Taurus and Tracy put on a bunch of community events that were a big hit. So getting around to all of those and getting to see so many new faces this year was really awesome. Definitely got around to all of the people that I wanted to see, and I definitely made some new friends this year as well. So it still had that small community feel. I think people were so inviting and welcoming that you know, anyone that was even new would have found a group of people that they could have gone to an after conference event with.
Yeah.
One that got me the most excited was LinkedIn's talk on the fast boot stuff that they're doing. I don't think that I'd get an opportunity to use it anytime soon or try to build out my own version of it since they haven't open sourced it, but it was definitely a technical and really just incredible talk. Ember community is huge on giving back. They're very much about open source. People give so much of their time to Ember as far as the developers and core team members and people that are contributing to the code base. But even the community leaders, I know that I spend a ton of time on my Ember community here in San Diego, and I'm sure that you do the same. Everyone finds their own little way back to give back to the Ember community and make it even better. And then next year we'll have 1,500 people, you know?
Exactly.
And the diversity is amazing. The sense of community is great.
Cool.
Like it still felt like a small conference because we were in the same size wing as we were the year before. Like we didn't take up a bunch of extra rooms. They just split it into the half room on this side and half room on that side for the double track. So even though there were 1,000 people there, almost, which you could definitely tell at lunch when everyone filed into the cafeteria. Yeah. But you couldn't really tell when you were in the hallway or in the hallway track or in your own world of the conference in whatever room you decided to go watch a talk in. So it still felt really small. It didn't feel that huge. And like I said, there were so many outside of conference events going on in smaller groups that you still got that small feel.
Yeah.
The contributors event just to like see what was up. I went with Taurus and we brought some donuts, and that's where I connected with Luke Melia, and we were able to schedule a parkour outing later in the evening. So I ended up going parkouring and getting a giant bruise on my shin. So that was fun. So I'm really actually glad that I stopped by that. There were a lot of people there, and there were core team members helping kind of more fresh developers that want to contribute, learn how to contribute, you know, kind of just guiding them along for their first PR. It was pretty cool.
Very cool.
No, just another plug for the workshop and the date. So it's April 27th, and it's at 7 p.m. at the Marina Village Conference Center. And you can sign up on our meetup page, San Diego-Ember.
We're a software consultancy based in Boston. We were probably one of the first consultancies to really declare ourselves as an Ember consultancy, going back 4 years now. We've been pretty heavily involved with the community. Robert Jackson worked for us for about a little bit less than 2 years. We've published a lot of popular add-ons. In fact, the add-on as a concept was actually invented at Dockyard. We run Boston Ember. We do the WikiGood Ember conference, which is coming up at the end of June. We're still looking for speakers, and we have about 50 tickets remaining. We've sold about 100 so far. And what I'm currently doing in Ember is, it's actually interesting. So I had, as a CEO of the company, I don't get to do as much programming as I always like to. And also have to kind of explore new technologies and see where we can kind of move into. So for the past year or so, I've been really getting into Elixir. In the past 6 months, I hadn't done much Ember work, but recently, over the past few weeks, I've been getting back into Ember and building a small side project for Dockyard. So it's been an interesting experience in that I'm kind of in this place where I'm relearning Ember. I had stopped doing like full-time Ember development around the time of the 1.13 to 2.0 release, and I'm kind of playing catch up on where Ember has been. And it's actually pretty cool to see how much easier Ember's actually gotten to learn and get into just over the past few months even. I mean, it may be a little self-serving, but the talks by two of our engineers, Lauren Tan and Estelle DeBlois, I thought were really strong talks. But overall, my favorite talk was the opening keynote with Yehuda and Tom. Primarily because, well, they didn't bring up the term progressive web app. They were kind of pushing in that direction. And this, for us at Dockyard, progressive web apps are a very important thing where we see our future being over the next few years. We are kind of in this position where we've bet very heavily on the web. And because of that, we turn down contracts that are doing native application development. People come to us and want a single vendor solution for web and mobile native. And we've ended up kind of shying away from those contracts because we don't like doing subcontracting. And for lack of a better way to describe it, native is destroying the web on mobile. So from our perspective as a business, having a viable solution to the native question is very, very important. So we are putting a lot of stock and a lot of hope into progressive web apps as a way for us to build competitive solutions to native over the next few years. I don't think we're going to have anything really viable for maybe another year or so, but in the meantime, we are dedicated to supporting those efforts in many ways. So part of that was actually, part of that story in Ember, the progressive web app story, is fast boot. Server-side rendering is an important part of getting these really fast experiences on mobile. And our director of engineering, Dan McLean, we had him off of billable work for maybe about 3 months and focused on fast boot development. During the opening keynote, Tom actually showed off Dockyard.com, which we converted over to the newest version of fast boot the day before the conference. So about a year ago, we decided we were going to dog food our technologies, and we over-engineered our, what should be a basic content website for Dockyard.com, and we're using Phoenix on the back end and Ember on the front end. And we bought into fast boot a year ago, but there were issues then. And so a new effort was, I think about a couple months ago, Tom started really focusing on fast boot development and getting all these kind of bugs fixed in it. And Dan was helping out with that, as were others. There were other people involved. But so anything that has to do with progressive web apps right now is really important for Dockyard.
Yeah.
Well, we organized an event at it was like a video game bar on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
We had about 100 people there. It was pretty cool. I'm blanking on the name of the place now. It's probably
That's all right. Yeah, it's in the invite from Dockyard.
Yeah, I mean, we rented it out, and it was funny because people started saying, "Oh, it's the exclusive Dockyard event," but I would have, let everybody come. The only thing is that the place had a limit on the number of people that could come in. Wasn't our limit by any stretch. But so when so the bar itself, it's like a bar, but there's coin-op video games all around, and they're from every era. You go back and there's like Joust, and there's like Turtles in Time, and then there's this new one that I never heard of before that everyone seemed to like called Killer Queen, which is kind of like a multiplayer strategy game, I guess. I'm not really super familiar with it, but when I first walked in there to get the place ready for other people to come, I was the only one in there, and all the video games are free. And it's kind of like I had a flashback, like kid in a candy store. And it was really, I think I went around, I was like literally playing each game for 5 seconds and moving on to the next one.
Yeah.
It was
that's
kind
fun.
of overload. But that was pretty cool. I think the last night I was there, I did rock climbing which is really fun. I wrote a blog post about this that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just that I've been going to conferences for 10 plus years now, but I'm kind of at that point in my career that meeting the people is more valuable to me than actually going to the talks. The talks are great, and I don't want to devalue the effort that the speakers put into their time to put together really good talks. All the ones that I saw were excellent, but we work in an open source world, and so it's very rare that we're going to see something in a presentation, if you're connected to the community, that's going to be truly surprising or new to you in some way. So getting to meet people that you only know online, or getting to meet people you've never met before is, I think, the most rewarding experience for me at the conferences. So with Good Ember, it's a 2-day conference. That's June 27th and 28th. We rent an entire island in Boston Harbor. So it is a public island, but we rent all of the event space, and we have access to the entire island. Last year was a 1-day conference. We decided to do a 2-day conference this time. We built in some, like this morning of the second day, we built in some kind of free time so that people can actually chat with others, go and explore the island, that sort of thing. We're going to have some training on the island as well, Ember training. It does have Wi-Fi for those that are perhaps feel that they would be detached from society in some way. It's not too far. You can actually, the tide's actually low enough on one side of the island, you can walk back to the mainland if you desire to. We have, so far, Tom Dale is one of our keynotes. We have another keynote with Chris McCord, the creator of Phoenix, who also works at Dockyard. I think we have about 30 talks submitted so far. I'd like to probably try to get that number doubled. And we really want to try to hit gender parity. Well, I'll say minority parity or diversity parity, whatever is, I guess, the most acceptable term now. Not super up on that. But regardless, it's a goal of ours. So it'd be really nice. We have, I think, 14 slots total. It'd be nice to have 7 and 7. Just to really show that Ember, this is something that's important to the Ember community. It's important to us as well.
That's awesome.
So I am the lead front-end developer at Spark Networks. In the past 6 months or so, we have relaunched all our flagship websites in Ember. So jade8.com, christianmingle.com, and as of last week, Jade8.il. Went live, and those are all built in Ember. So that's what I've been working on, and it's pretty exciting. Our code base before we moved to Ember was a legacy .NET web forms application. So like from a user's perspective, it's such a huge leap to go from this like super static, old, slow, legacy application to something that feels so much more modern and so much faster and more responsive and reactive to user input. So it's been a lot of fun, like moving away from that and into something much newer.
Yeah, it's like
this was actually the first professional conference I've been to. Even though I've been working in software engineering for the past 7 years now, I've never gone to a professional conference. So the first thing that really stood out to me was how great the whole community around the conference was. It was really nice to go in knowing you guys from the SoCal meetup, so I didn't feel like I didn't know anyone. But within the first day of the conference, I went to a couple of outside of the conference events, and I felt like I knew so many people, and everyone was so friendly, and that was really great. The first, I guess, Sunday night before the conference, we were all staying in the conference hotel, and I ended up just hanging out in the bar at a table with a bunch of people working on their conference talks or hacking on their applications, and it was just really cool to sit around and talk to other people who are working in Ember about what they're working on and how they were working on and what their workflows were. So I really enjoyed that. But as for talks that really stood out to me, there was a talk called Easy Bake Testing, which was basically the TLDR of like, here's everything you need to know about testing your Ember app. Like, what's the difference between the different types of tests? How do you integrate those tests? How do you run those tests? What other libraries and frameworks can you use to increase your ability to run tests? And that was really just super informative to me. And I also am super interested in what's happening with Glimmer 2. So right now, my app has a different desktop experience than mobile experience because we're super concerned with mobile performance. And one of my sort of caveats with Ember right now is mobile performance isn't always great, especially when you're dealing with legacy JavaScript rendering and things like older Android apps or Android browsers. So like just listening to the core team talk about, hey, we know this is a problem and we are working to make that better was really great. Keynote. There was a line in the closing keynote that being opinionated doesn't make you an asshole. And I really loved that line, and I really like that idea. And obviously it's not something that I'm directly going to write down in a piece of code, but this concept that like just because we have opinions about how things need to be done doesn't mean that we're just being total jerks about that. And this idea of like how the community can come together to reverse the river, which was I think the name of the talk.
Yep.
And it was just super interesting, like the ideas behind change and community and how we all move together towards new things, which it was fascinating.
Question.
So I mentioned earlier the Easy Bake testing talk was just fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of other really good ones. There was a talk, it was entitled something like How I Learned to Love Ember, and the speaker, whose name I don't know off the top of my head, was talking about like how he went through JavaScript fatigue, where he was in Backbone, and then he was in Angular, and then he was in this, and then he was in that, and he just kept going through all these tools, and none of the tools could really give him what he needed. And then he came to Ember, and he was like, oh wait, it actually I'm not fighting all the battles anymore to make my application work because Ember gives me what I need. And it was just a really interesting look at something that I feel like I've gone through and am still going through. Like, I can't go 5 seconds without hearing somebody go, why don't we rebuild it in React? And it's just like, can we just settle? Can we just decide on a tool and stick with that? And one of the things I love about Ember is Ember gives me so much out of the box that it's easier to say Ember is the path I want to go down, rather than like with React, where I have to figure out every other tool set in my tool chain to sort of make things work. So I really liked that one.
Well, I have a question. Portland has good food. Tell us what you ate. Was there anything you enjoyed?
Oh man, I ate so much good food in Portland. Saturday night I went down to Burnside to an oyster bar and had great oysters. I did the salt and straw ice cream that everyone was raving about, although I feel kind of cheated now because apparently there's both a salt and straw and a Blue Star in Los Angeles, so I feel like it's lost some of the magic now that I know I can get that locally. And we had Thai food from a food truck one night that was like the most unassuming little food truck, and the Thai food was great. So, and beer. There's a lot of really good beer.
Cool. And then generally, like, what did you think about, staying in the hotel? Because I think you stayed at the main venue versus like an Airbnb. You mentioned kind of everyone was downstairs at the bar kind of talking shop. Was that kind of consistent, really, like getting to meet new people because of your location? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so many people from the conference were staying at that same DoubleTree hotel, and it was really nice to like walk down and see everyone with their laptops with their Tomster stickers. So like my laptop has the SoCal Tomster, and you know, it was sort of like this badge of like, oh hey, I know why you're here. Let's strike up a conversation. And there were definitely several nights where I was grabbing an Uber over to an after conference event, and I would sort of just see people hanging around like outside and be like, oh, are you heading to, you know, the meat and drinks or this or that, you want to split an Uber, and I would just meet awesome people. So like having that sort of sense of community by everyone staying in the same sort of area outside of the conference was really nice.
Yeah. And then what about Monday? I think, were you able to attend any of the pre-conference events, the official ones? Yeah.
So I did two things on Monday. So I also went to the Women Helping Women luncheon, which was just fantastic. As a woman in technology, other women aren't necessarily the most visible to me, so being in a room surrounded by other just like fantastic lady devs was awesome, and just, you know, getting to know other people and feeling like going into the conference I had all these people I had a connection with. And I also went to the mentee-mentor meet and greet Monday night because never been to a professional conference and didn't know anyone, and so that was, I think it was 40 people, and it was kind of like speed dating where you'd have like a minute to talk to each person and just, you know, get to know them. So those two things, and I did a training workshop on Monday. Like going into the conference Tuesday morning, I felt like I knew half the people there. Like suddenly I was old friends with everyone, and it made it a lot. As someone who's introverted and sometimes can feel overwhelmed by large social situations, it made it a lot easier, like going in being like, oh, we're all old friends, it's cool.
Yeah, it kind of broke the ice, right, and created a common bond. I think that's harder to do just on Slack, right? Like we kind of do chat and connect. We connect at our local meetups, but the conference, I think, is that, you know, hey, we met in real life, and you know, now we have this kinship. You know, you may see them next year, you may not. You know, you may see them in Slack, who knows? So, do you think, like, what's your takeaway from the conference? Like, you know, how does that change kind of your perspective towards the projects that you're working on at work, or, you know, solidify your framework choice? You know, what was the kind of the TLDR for bringing it home? Yeah.
I came home super energized and excited. Like, not that I'm not excited to work on the stuff I work on anyways, but just like coming back from this great community event where I got to talk to all the other people, both going through the same problems I'm, you know, having with my upgrade path at the moment, but also just like people trying to push the web and Ember forward. It was really energizing to come back and be like, look at all these great things that are happening, look at these things that are coming, like, let's get to where we need to be so we can take advantage of all this exciting stuff.